Hello and welcome to Dugout Debrief. I'm your host, Chris DeLuca. This is Boom Broadcasting's one, first, and only baseball centric podcast. And I'm once again so happy to talk about something I really, really care about on the best up and coming sports YouTube channel and just social media outlet in general with some great people. And I'm happy to be able to be given this outlet to talk about baseball, talk about this great postseason that we're going through because the NL and ALCS, and it has just been a wild conference championship here so far. I want to give a quick editor's note right now that normally this is recorded early Thursday morning, but today, due to me having to move, this is recorded Wednesday night. So we have the Dodger game just to my right here, 2-0 in the bottom of the fourth inning. Walker Buehler is pitching, so I'm going to go take a look over there every so often. With that being said, I got my Dodger jersey on. I'm excited for this. The Dodgers beat the Padres. We're going to talk about that just a little bit later. But with that being said, we're going to go get into the news as we always do every week, and we're going to have to start with something that is kind of serious. Tropicana Field will not be the place that the Tampa Bay Rays play this coming spring, unfortunately, due to the damage by Hurricane Milton. The entire roof was ripped off, and this is really just a hard thing to see as someone who has been there before. um, they used a fiberglass tarp roof, and due to safety concerns they have actually not been able to get an insurance person or the team itself to go there and give an estimate. So this stadium was very similar to that of the Hubert Humphrey Dome. So, for you guys who are football fans, I'm sure you remember in 2010 when the Hubert Humphrey Dome in Minneapolis collapsed, and that was a very, very scary situation. That's where the Minnesota Twins played, and that was where the Minnesota Vikings played, who are currently in season, because I believe this happened in December, but please quote me if I'm wrong, January or December or something like that. And there's a lot of things that are strange about this. The first thing to say is thank God nobody was inside when this happened. That would have been a tragedy. And in a second note, this is supposed to be a storm shelter. And that's what makes this really, really terrifying. If you guys look at the videos on Instagram, Twitter, or whatever social media, you will see all of the cots out there in center field, in the infield, in the entire field. And this field was meant to be like the Superdome was after Katrina, where people were going to go there who lost their homes or, regardless of circumstance, had to stay there. And this is something that really, really disturbed me, seeing the roof pulled off and the cots just being blown around there. It's disturbing. And we also have had people who have had to deal with the consequences of the previous hurricane with Hurricane Helene in Western North Carolina. We had a couple people who had to delay their shows, and I am still just praying and wishing the best for everybody who is having to deal with Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton down in Florida, our friends down there and our friends in Western North Carolina. We are praying for them here on Dugout Debrief and all of Boom Broadcasting. We've had discussions about that. Wayne on Sideline Savants had a great, quick memorial that he held for the victims of that. And we have discussed that. We have been very open, and we have had people affected by this disaster, both of these disasters. So we pray for them and we hope just the quickest possible recovery. But with that being said, this was supposed to be a storm shelter. And that is what's even more disturbing. And another thing to note before we actually get into what we think the Rays are going to do is this is the only fully indoor stadium in all of baseball. And I believe this is the only fully indoor stadium in all of sports. Quote me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it is because pretty much all of them are retractable roof situations. And what that means is Tropicana Field is not it does not drain. It does not have a drainage technology. So, for example, my local park when I am in West Virginia, my alumni mater is PNC Park, and it rains a lot in Pittsburgh. That is something for all you Yinzers definitely know. a place like Atlanta, where it also rains a lot, or um, Chicago as well. Both parks in Chicago, they have very, very good drainage technology, but the issue with Tropicana Field is they do not have that because it is artificial turf and it is 100% indoors. So the flooding in that ballpark basically means that they're going to have to replace all of the AstroTurf that they have. They're also going to probably have to replace the concrete and rubber underside of it. And this is many, many millions of dollars in damage. And as we've said, there is no way to make an insurance estimate as of now due to the fact that it is not safe for staff members, players, or representatives from whoever they have their insurance company to look at the quality and the conditions overall, not really quality necessarily, but the conditions of the field and what they can do. And that is something that is incredibly challenging. Like we said, this is similar to the Hubert Humphrey Dome that collapsed in 2010 due to snow. And there is a similar situation because this is a quick thing they need to turn around. They got about 152 days to 151 days to figure this out. And it's really hard because there's not really a lot of places near there that they can play. There are a couple that I'm going to go list off. Montreal has been floated as a place that the Rays could potentially go, which is not something that I see happening because Montreal has made it very, very clear that they will not accept anything that is not Les Expos. That is not Les Expos. There is not any team that they will accept that is not named the Expos. They have made that very clear, and that's understandable because Montreal made that city. The Expos made that city. In my opinion, there should still be baseball in Montreal. It should just not be any team that is not named the Expos. And in the midseason, there was that discussion that they might move there and play half the games there, which I thought that was a really kind of dumb idea, to be honest with you. So overall, I do not believe Montreal is a great idea personally. And with the addition to that is Montreal. I mean, it had baseball relatively recently with some minor league games, I think were played up there and a couple of indie ball games. But overall, I do not believe Olympic Stadium to be a baseball ready stadium. So that being said, we move on to the second one. We're going to move on to the most realistic one, which is Steinbrenner Field. That is the New York Yankees spring training facility. They play there just in spring training. And it has a capacity of 11,026, and I think that that could hold the Rays fans. The Rays average attendance was 16,500 ballpark or so, and the field will be available after the Yankees are done. But the big question becomes is how much are the Yankees going to charge for rent? What are they going to charge? What are they going to expect? You have an AL East rival that you're going to kind of have to hope isn't going and just trying to be like, oh, yeah, we're going to go charge you a bunch of money because we don't want you to have a ballpark. And like I said, this is the most realistic option. I think the MLB will probably pitch in and help here. But yeah, I think that's the most realistic option. It's only about 25 miles. It's in the interior bay of Tampa, so it's not in St. Petersburg. It's a little bit inland, but I think the Rays could still find a home there. And another option is Lone Depot Park in Miami. But there's really one way that I can shoot that out of the sky, and it's the fact that the schedule is already made. The MLB schedule is already made. We know who's going to be home. We know who's going to be away. So that's the issue is you're going to basically have to change the schedule for both Florida teams. And I don't think the MLB is willing to do that. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options here, and like I said, Steinbrenner Field's the most realistic, but we're gonna go to an option that has been floated, and I really want to get you guys' opinion on this. Call me crazy? Oakland. You have an MLB ready stadium, at least to the standards of the MLB, while it might not be ideal. You have the Oakland Coliseum, a team that just lost their baseball team tragically to a horrible, horrible owner. And I don't think this would be a Tennessee Oilers situation when they're in Memphis. For those who know, the Oilers moved from Houston. They didn't have Nissan Stadium ready in Nashville, so they had to play in Memphis for a few years, and they basically only attracted a few hundred people a game because most people in Memphis were like, why the heck should I care about this team? Because they're going to move to Nashville anyway, and Memphis is, however many hundreds of miles from Nashville. I mean, center part of the state and then corner part of the state. So they did not really care, but I really think that there's a lot to be taken into comprehension here because both teams have dealt with owners that just refuse to pay, refuse to support the team. And in addition to that, they both have dealt with relocation situations as well. They both needed ballparks. The only thing is the Rays got really lucky and found an investor or something that is supposedly willing to pay in for a ballpark. The A's were an unfortunate situation, and the Rays were also an unfortunate situation. The only thing is with the Rays is they were unfortunately a victim of a natural disaster, which many people were affected much more by than the Rays, obviously. So overall, I will say that they need a place to play. There's 150 some games until the next season. Florida, California, or maybe Montreal, but I think Steinbrenner Field is the best. I think that has the most capacity. That is the closest, only like 21 miles away. The Rays were supposed to get a new stadium by 2028 called Gas Plant Stadium. We will see how that goes in downtown St. Pete. I don't know how that will go, if it will happen. There's a lot still up in the air, but to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I do not think that the city of St. Petersburg has any intention to put the roof or help at least to put the roof back on the Tropicana field. So I think that is the end of the Rays playing at the Trop, unfortunately. And I think wherever they call their home next will be the last place that they play at until they get the new stadium somewhere in St. Petersburg. Moving on to our next story, Aaron Judge hit a postseason home run. Wow, that's really crazy, propelling the Yankees to a 2-1 lead over the Guardians, a very strong one, which will air this evening. Thursday night, so not my evening, but your evening. He struggled in the postseason. Him getting back into the power game is incredibly crucial for them. That was really big for the Yankees that he got to hit that home run and really show who he truly is. And we've talked about Aaron Judge previously in the postseason and all these game makers in the postseason, how important this is for them to be good. So yeah, next news story, MLB All-Rookie team were released. Some notable names, Paul Skeens, Shota Imanaga, Colton Cowser, Mason Miller, Jackson Merrill, and Michael Busch, who is a rookie, apparently. He was on the Dodgers for a little bit. We traded him to Chicago. Apparently, he's still a rookie, so I kind of thought that was wild. Gold Glove nominees, just some notable ones to list off in my notes. Bobby Witt Jr., Anthony Volpe, Nathaniel Lowe, Andres Jimenez, Juan Soto, Joe Adele, Alex Bregman, Stephen Kwan, and Jose Ramirez are some notable guys on that Gold Glove team, which we're going to have the final a little bit after the season, but we'll see. I think all those guys are very, very deserving, but I figure I would give you guys a little bit of a award preview because we're going to have an award breakdown here in a few weeks. With that being said, we'll get to our final news story. The Dodgers tie the postseason scoreless innings record of 33, tying the 1966 Baltimore Orioles World Series team. They shut out the Padres in game 4 and 5. And look, we did what we needed to do. I said this last week. I said this. Tatis was doing this. Well, he's crying back down the I-5. I mean, that's the thing. It's plain and simple. He's doing this except down the I-5, which every single one of the Padres are doing, because we were their World Series. They were going directly after a postseason win, a rare thing for them. And just thinking about the Dodgers, just thinking about beating the Dodgers, that's all they cared about. And I respect that because the Dodgers are a great ball team. But your end goal should be the World Series, not to beat the Dodgers. And I'm not even going to beat into it because there's really no point because they lost. They're going home. They're going back to their Petco Park, and they can think about it for another 150 some days until we become their World Series again, as we always do. But I'm just so happy, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to finally say this because I've not been able to say this on the show because I'm not that hugely confident of a guy when it comes to my sports teams. Cry. Go home and cry. Cry about it. The Dodgers were your big brother. Goodbye, little brother. Go back. But again, this is not a Dodger centric podcast, so I'm not even going to mention that much. Bullpen game in game four, Evan Phillips, Anthony Bonda, Alex Vesey, Ryan Brazier, Daniel Hudson, Knack, Yamamoto kept us in it as he always does. Not really. Game five, and we did what we needed to do. We beat them. I'm not still celebrating it. Obviously, I'm happy about it, but unlike them, we're not celebrating that as a long-term thing. But with that being said, we are moving into the ALCS and the NLCS because as we are doing, we are just talking about the postseason. That's what I've been doing this entire show. So with that being said, we're going to go move into our ALCS. We got the Guardians and Jason's Yankees, who have a critical game this evening on Thursday. The Guardians kind of have to stay into it, and I have a little prediction for that, which we will get into later. But, the Guardians come back and beat the Tigers in game five, but lost 5-2 to the Yankees in game one. Steven Kwan, Rocchio, and Big Christmas fought hard, but, with that fatigued bullpen, there was just not much you could do. That was the big issue. To keep them in the game, they needed that very fatigued bullpen to continue to have good innings, eat innings. Soto and Stanton hit home runs for New York, along with a quality start by Carlos Rodon, which I was not expecting to have as good of a start as he did, but he most definitely had a great start. I think 6 or 7 innings with only 1 run given up. And, game two was a lot harder because Garrett Cole was on the mound, and he's pretty good at baseball. The Guardians created the Guardians created traffic, but they just couldn't get much across. Jose Ramirez hit a solo shot, plus he walked. This time I was kind of expecting them to win because they had a rested bullpen. They had Cade Smith, Gaddis, Clase, all of those guys were rested, but they just could not pull it through. Hunter Gaddis gave up, I think, 2 runs. The starter gave up 2 runs of that game. Who was that? Alex Cobb, either game 1 or game 2. But still, it was hard. Tanner Bybee also struggled. New York just overall did well. Aaron Judge hit a home run, his first of this postseason. Gleyber Torres also had a solid game. So if I'm going to give you my overall prediction for this, because there's not really much to say about this series and not much to say about the next one either, there's not really much to say about it at this point of the year because you're just watching it. Overall, I'm going to give it to New York in 5. I think Cleveland will win today with Matthew Boyd on the mound. He is facing a struggling Clark Schmidt, who has like a 4.5 ERA or so. And Guardians really need to come alive. They're going back to Cleveland, going back to Progressive, going back to the Lake. I think that they can pull one, but I think they lose the next 2, and I believe that will be it for them. I think that it gets clinched in game 6. Let's roughly say, so they might win 2, but it's close. I'm still on the cusp with that, but I think the Guardians take 1 or 2, but I think New York wins that series. And with that being said, we're going to move on to the NLCS. Dodgers looked fantastic in game 1, winning 9-0. Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Kike Hernandez, and a very, very banged up Freddie Freeman had a huge momentum game to dominate in game 1. And that is what we needed. But unfortunately, we have not seen that because in game 2, it was a much different story. Francisco Lindor, Matt Vientos, both with home runs. Sean Manaea has gone past that aforementioned playoff struggles that we have discussed earlier in this show. He finally seems to be a good playoff pitcher. He had like a 10.5 ERA going into the postseason before this. Max Muncy had a home run, but didn't really help much in the long term because we really just needed to create traffic. That's something we have struggled with so far. And that's something we've struggled so far in the series. I got right to my right here, ladies and gentlemen, is just creating base traffic, having the crucial guys get on and more of them pile up. We had the bases loaded and could not fulfill that here in game three. I will say our key to win is both teams need to play this combination of small ball and home run ball that got them there. There's a reason that these teams are there. It's not the all or nothing ball. Both these teams play a great, um, just ground and pound, as they would say in football, just contact hitting with some really, really big power hitters. So again, not much to be said. We have a lot left. We're going to go and have our World Series prediction episode here next week, a week from today. We'll talk about that. I might be on out of pocket. We will see. I might want to do a little bit of a late playoff or World Series preview. But with that being said, we're going to get into our trivia question. And the trivia question from last week is, who is the only player to win the MVP award in both the American and National League? And I'm going to give you guys 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds to decide. It is Frank Robinson. It is Frank Robinson is your answer. I kind of went with a just generic one there. I kind of went with your team trivia at the bar kind of question, one you're either going to know or not going to know. But your answer is Frank Robinson, ladies and gentlemen. And this week, this is one that I hold near and dear to me because he is one that I really love to put on the immaculate grid. Figure that out how you will, rather. Who is the only pitcher to throw a no-hitter in the Rockies organization? Guy I like to use in my grid. I like to joke about him. He had a good career. He had a hard ending to his career. That will be my hint to you, is he had not the best ending to his career. But with that being said, I am sorry for cutting this early, but like I said, I am in the process of moving. I have a lot going on, and I want to thank you for listening to the Dugout Debrief here on Boom Broadcasting, listening to the best up and coming sports YouTube channel. And there are a lot of people I got to promote, and I'm going to go start with quick hits because I keep forgetting to promote Podcast Smitty's show 2 weeks in a row now. And if Podcast Smitty's listening right now, I'm sure he's going to be like, now you do. So we love Podcast Smitty. Make sure to listen to Out of Pocket. Make sure to listen to the Gridiron Address, of which I am a consistent guy who shows up on there. I've been on there like 3 weeks in a row. We just talk about football. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit less enthusiastic because my Steelers barely want to win a football game. But again, we talk about football there. We talk about baseball here. And once again, thank you for tuning into the Dugout Debrief. I will see you in the World Series, ladies and gentlemen.